In this screencast, we're going to talk about lipids, specifically the ones that are found in our food. So lipids are also called fats, and they are used to store energy. Fat stores more than 2 times the energy of carbohydrates. And so when we're talking about energy, we're usually talking about calories here. And so yes, they also do have twice the calories per gram than a carbohydrate does, but that means they're storing twice the energy. Plants don't need to move, so they can have their energy stored in these bulky carbohydrates, things like fruits and roots. However, animals need more compact storage because we move around, so we have fat. Fat is used for energy. It's also used for insulation to keep us warm and for protection to help cushion things like organs. Fat is held in a tissue called adipose. So when we talk about fats, we're going to talk about saturated fats, unsaturated fats, and trans fats. So the first one we'll talk about are saturated fats. The reason a saturated fat is called a saturated fat is because it is saturated with hydrogen atoms. So saturated means to be full of, and so this saturated fat is full of hydrogen atoms. So if you look here, we have a carbon backbone, and each one has a single covalent bond that has hydrogen, okay? And so this means it's completely saturated. It's carrying as much hydrogen as possible. Most animal fats are saturated fats, so any kind of fat we're getting from an animal, whether that's butter or lard, or if it's in meat, cheese, dairy of any kind, in your ice cream, milk, cream, any kind of fat that comes from an animal, is usually going to be saturated. Then we have unsaturated fats. Most of these are liquid at room temperature, and so we call them oils. But these unsaturated fats, again, get their name based on their chemical structure. So you can see here, we don't have as many hydrogen atoms as we could because there's a double covalent bond between those two carbon atoms. So unsaturated fats have at least one double covalent bond, but could have a lot more. Most of the fat we get from plants or fish are unsaturated. So here's just a little cartoon of an avocado bragging about how it is a good fat because it's unsaturated, considered a healthier fat, versus the saturated fat of a butter. So when we talk about fat in our food, we do have all the things I just talked about where we have saturated fat and unsaturated fat, but there's more to it than that. So many processed foods that we eat are called hydrogenated, or they have something listed called hydrogenated oil or partially hydrogenated oil. And what these foods do is they chemically add a hydrogen atom to an unsaturated fat to turn it into a saturated fat and make it more stable. Saturated fats, especially trans fats, contribute to heart disease and atherosclerosis, so that is not good. Trans fats have to be listed on the label of food, in the nutrition label, within the US, and they're actually banned in some countries. So the US has done a pretty good job of reducing the amount of trans fats in our food. Still have a little bit of work to go, but we've done a lot better job reducing those trans fats so that they are not present in our food since they are so unhealthy. We also have something called omega-3s. These are good fats that come from the diet. Our bodies can't make them, and so there are lots of foods that are high in omega-3s, and there's a lot of different research about how omega-3s are good for different things, including brain health. Lastly, we'll talk about steroid. Steroids are a type of lipid, and the one that we'll talk about is cholesterol. Cholesterol is a steroid, and we need it. It comes from our diet, and it's also made by the liver. So we can eat cholesterol, and we make cholesterol. High levels of cholesterol in our blood are very dangerous, and they again can contribute to atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of our arteries. Trans fats and saturated fats will affect cholesterol levels in a negative way. So it's important to try to keep cholesterol out of your diet. It's also really important to look out to look at your family's medical history, because genetics are a very large component of cholesterol production. And so if you have high cholesterol in your family, it's quite possible that you too will end up with high cholesterol, but it's still very important to make sure we're eating a healthy diet and try to limit the cholesterol in our diet.